Ahead of our new kind of Kingdom Sessions live, I got a chance to sit down with special guest Austin Binitie, change consultant and entrepreneur, to talk about how he lives out God's kingdom in and through his work. We talked about all things God, business, entrepreneurship and more, so I hope you enjoy. Hey guys, so thank you for watching. Obviously we've got our new kind of Kingdom Sessions coming up on Thursday the 12th of May, and we've got one of our amazing guests with us here today, Austin Binitie. So Austin, we're going to be chatting a little bit about you, about your story, about your journey, where you're at now, and like where God fits into all of that, and maybe get some gems, some advice from all of that. But just to start off, why don't you give a little introduction of yourself, who you are, what you did for university, what you do now. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So hi all, so I'm Austin. I am married to Chichi, and we've got a 2-year-old boy who is just full of life and a lot of energy. And if you listen really closely, you can probably hear him in the background somewhere making some noise. By profession, I'm a change consultant, and that seems like it's very difficult to explain in terms of why do you need a change consultant. But I'm a change professional. I work on a lot of IT change. So when people want to work from home, or when you're trying to get new devices or software upgrades, a lot of that weird and wonderful stuff. That's what work for me looks like. I studied in Bradford Uni. My only undergraduate degree was in economics at the University of Bradford. And afterwards, I kind of went on to do a master's in business, an MBA. And after that, I've kind of just done a lot of professional certifications to kind of help me do what I do better.
That's amazing. So you say you went to university in Bradford. How would you describe your university experience?
University was interesting, I guess. I think my undergraduate kind of degree was totally different to what my master's was like. I think when I was doing my sort of BSc, I didn't really fully appreciate what I was doing it for. I didn't have good context on, okay, so when I've got this economics degree, what do I want to do with it? I had ideas of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't, I guess, as clear even after I finished uni. So I guess for some of you out there who are feeling as though actually, you've spent this much time of your life doing a degree and you're still not clear, you're not alone. It can be quite daunting, and I did feel like I needed some time to figure out where I wanted to focus on. I did know though that I was quite entrepreneurial. I knew that I wanted to do something within sort of commerce and business, and that's kind of where I came alive, I guess. And so having done my undergraduate degree, spending some time just in the corporate world, getting some experience, learning and figuring out where in the corporate space I could, where in the corporate space would add most value to me and sort of have good synergy with what I'm good at. It was kind of helpful to help me shape that. And that's after that, 2-3 year stint is when I went to do my MBA, because that's what I felt was going to help equip me to move on to the next stage of my career. So in answering your question, undergrad was not very focused. It was kind of going with the flow. My master's was super focused, and I could see the purpose in it. So I gave 100% into that, because I could see how that fit within the jigsaw, as it were.
That's amazing. And so you mentioned basically not knowing exactly what to do after university, which I think most people can relate to. But you mentioned about having that entrepreneurial spirit, like something that was within you all that way. Where do you think that entrepreneurial spirit came from? Where do you think that started?
For as long as I can remember, I've always liked the idea of solving problems. But that's not, essentially you offer a service, right? So if I can solve a problem for you, that's of value to you, then that's a business. And so the essence of I guess who I am is I like to fix things, not necessarily with my hands, but looking at gaps or looking at where there is a need and going, hey, like you can do this and that, and plug that gap. And then if I get financially rewarded for it, amazing. So I think even as far back as when I was in college, I got pocket money, and I'll take most of my pocket money. These were the days when eBay just came out, and you had eBay US and eBay UK, and I'd go and literally look for like good deals, all the ice cream shoes and those sorts of things for you guys who know that what that is. And I'd buy them from the US, and that was when the pound was like a pound was like $2 or something. So I'd buy them from the US and bring them, import them into the UK, and then repackage and sell it on eBay UK. Double my money, get excited, do the same. And so from as far back as I can remember, I'd always been, interested in that sort of thing. Not so much because of how much more money you make, but just the idea that actually, I thought about this thing, I did it, and it actually provided, I got a financial reward for it. Yeah, so I guess where that came from, I guess it's probably a God-given thing that's wired inside me somewhere. I can't point to one particular thing that kind of triggered that desire.
So it sounds like it's the way that God created you to be, and I think that being an entrepreneur is something that's like in like modern day culture. It's like almost like the highest. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur now. Do you think that is something that, like you say, you're born with, or do you think people can grow to become an entrepreneur, or do you think it's something that you have to have the characteristics kind of inbred in you?
I think I might be going heavy with it, but I think everyone has the trait in there in different forms, and we're going to talk a lot more because it's interesting because it's kind of in line with what I feel like Holy Spirit's been talking to me about in terms of what's going to happen in our new kind of kingdom session. And essentially it's this whole idea that we're all given, we all have talents, we all have things that he's placed on the inside of us, and it doesn't always have to be hey, I'm going to go make a lot of money by doing business and doing X, Y, and Z. But there is a particular thing that God's given. There's something of value that he's placed on the inside of all of us that actually, if we pushed out into the world, for me that's entrepreneurial. It doesn't have to be a financial reward. It's a thing of, actually, there's this thing that's of treasure that God's given to me, and I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to push it out and birth it into the world, because in me birthing into the world, I am serving humanity, and what I'm birthing could be the difference for those who are around me.
That's amazing. It's reminding me of the parable of the talents, and kind of like real biblical like founding there. I agree with that. So in terms of pursuing your entrepreneurial spirit, how does that line up with what you do kind of for your day-to-day job in terms of your change consultant? How do those two things mesh or work together? Or is there any tension between what you feel like God's calling you to do and what your 9 to 5 is asking you to do?
So I think if I had to define in a sentence, what I do is I solve problems. That's it. And so it is very much wired. To me, it's very much in line with what I feel like I'm naturally kind of gifted at, in terms of being able to solve problems and look for ways to do things better, look for ways to improve things that had been before. And so at the essence of what I do for work, there is that element of fixing problems, which is what you might argue to be what an entrepreneur is all about. I think there are obviously tension points in terms of how you go about doing that, because obviously, even though you're operating within your gifting, there's an external culture that you're going up against, where it's like, actually, the way we go about, rewarding and recognizing people is based on how you can push others down so you can lift up your profile and all of that sort of stuff. So there is tension in, obviously, yes, you're operating in your gifting in a corporate space, but also there's a culture that exists within that corporate space that you're going up against, because that's not who we're wired to be. In fact, we're called to lift others up and not push them down. And so and I can go into a lot of detail on that, but I think what that attitude itself brings, it breathes a lot of kind of life into you're bringing life into kind of corporate spaces where you're going, hey, like, I'm not trying to take from anyone. I'm trying to push and give you guys credit even more so, and call out the greatness and the kings and queens in you guys. And then that helps build a lot of trust and, a lot more value in, actually, it's not so much about what I know, but it's about what I bring to the team, in terms of, by me being there, I'm changing the culture and being part of changing that. So there's a tension, but the tension is good. To me, it's a good sort of tension that, you have to kind of bring kingdom into.
So it's inherently countercultural, which I guess is the call on us as followers of Jesus. So what would you say, are there any like go-to practices or things that you do to kind of stay countercultural, to not get washed away in like in corporate culture, I guess?
I don't think it's heavy. Like, and I might be being simplistic, but I really don't think it has to be that heavy. It's very much a, you know, because I get my identity, value, and all those things from who God's called me to be, and my abiding in Him, as it were. Naturally, what flows out of me is actually I just want to be good to people around me. And sometimes it's hard because some people are just not very lovely to be around. It's just the reality. But they're not being lovely, even though it makes them hard to love. It doesn't change the call on my life to actually be there and, love those who are unlovely. So I guess, it doesn't have to be this deep thing. I think, me just showing up as Austin and who God's called Austin to be in those spaces, there is a unique thing in my wiring that God's placed on the inside of me that I don't need to act and be something more than I am, aside just being Austin in whatever those situations are. So yeah, I don't think that's a heavy or deep response, but I think it's just show up as who you are and who God's called you to be, and naturally that kind of brings life.
And that's pretty powerful. It's just like a city on a hill is not meant to be hidden. Like, we're called to be light, we're called to be salt. And I think that's kind of like the core of, like, the heart of the new kind of kingdom sessions is that we would all know what it's like to be salt, what it's like to be light in these different areas, and kind of without that, like, God's kingdom is not really gonna come in earth. And so why do you, and I didn't write this down because we were freestyling, now we're going off, but it's good. But why do you think that it's important for Christians to be in different areas of society, rather than just maybe, pursuing ministry or pursuing, a Christian profession? Why do you think it's important that we're in these different spheres?
The hair in the back of my hair standing on that question. so for me, I feel like, and I guess I can't, again, put the best language to it, so I'm probably going to butcher it. But I feel like one of the things for me that pushed me, or I'll say how I feel,
Yeah.
So I think the idea that finance and money is supposed to be something that Christians don't have or run away from, for me is not the gospel at all. That's just how I feel. I think the lust for money, or that desire that you cannot satisfy because you always want more, is unhealthy. But I think probably 95% of the prayers we pray every day, it will be answered by money, right? So we need to get rid of this idea that money is not spiritual, or there is something that's inherently bad or wicked with money. That's not it at all. And I know that's one side of your question. The other side is that we're called to be, like you said earlier, salt and light wherever we are. We don't need light in church. We don't need light in the places where we all gather together. We need light where there is darkness. And so if our response is, hey, like, let's do church better, let's do ministry better, what better ministry looks like is, how do I show up to my church, which is my job, or my community, or that's my church? How do I show up there and not necessarily be like, hey guys, it's prayer time, but how can I be like, I love Jesus and I love you guys, and when there is something going on in your life, I'm going to throw myself in the midst of that and just show you and call out the greatness in you and what I believe God's saying to you, not necessarily in it, oh, the Spirit's saying this, but looking for relational language where I can go, hey, like, I actually feel like this isn't the end of you. There's going to be a lot more, and I'm going to be with you. I'm just loving people where they're at. It's not deep, it's practical. And I guess in answering your question, we don't need more light in church. We need more light in society. And if we all kind of push and stay and occupy the spaces we're in, then we can make actually a huge difference to our society and communities.
It's actually so powerful, and I think some of us need to hear that, because I think there's and then, even though we go through university and everything is about our course, our grades, or whatever, sometimes there's an inherent guilt in wanting to pursue those things, in having personal dreams and having dreams and visions. And maybe we're forgetting that, like, no, God actually put those dreams and visions inside of us for a purpose, and we all have different ones for a reason as well. So we're saying about being light in the world. Are there any other scriptural bases for Christians being a part of the change and the things that we see in the world? So we see poverty, we see racial injustice, we see gender inequality in the workplace, these very social and political aspects. What are the kind of like the biblical founders for us as Christians to be a part of the change?
I think I mean, the kind of scripture that comes, or the scriptures that come to mind is the whole situation with Joseph and how God's trying to completely transform and preserve his own people, but also preserve humanity in general. And so he set a plan in motion that looked pretty horrible, and it looked really challenging for Joseph. But in the midst of all of that, God was engineering a situation where actually Joseph, who was this guy who believed, in God, was put in a space where he could completely, prepare, for God put him there to prepare for the preservation of humanity by storing food and all that stuff. And how did the thing that was on him that made him in that position wasn't his skill, it was literally what God had placed on the inside of him. So he couldn't claim credit for it, right? I can't claim credit for anything that I do, because as a believer, I'm believing that actually, God, you're the one giving me the insights to be able to show up and cure cancer. You're giving me the insight to show up and be the most amazing barber that there is. And it doesn't have to be branded as this like super spiritual thing. It's practical. And in fact, in the Old Testament, and I can't remember where exactly, but there was a bit where essentially I think they were looking to go and rebuild a city or something, and God kind of gave he gave them this spiritual gifts which looked like a good bronze maker or a good wood carpenter, and these were like, God given, like, I pray for you, I bless you spiritually, and all of a sudden you have these skills that you have no context for in the natural. And so I guess in a very roundabout way, I'm saying take what God's given to you as an individual and cherish that and live it out to the best you can. It doesn't mean that, because God's given it to you, it's perfect, or it's a tree all of a sudden. It gives it to you in seed form. Then you go to university and then you go try your hand at a business and it fails and it hurts. And you learn, and then you go again and it fails and it hurts and you go again. That's the process of refining and kind of taking that treasure that God's given to you and kind of stewarding it right, because in you trying to live out what he's placed on the inside of you, you are being an answer to society's problems. So whether it's you show up in a business and you set up a business and you employ 20 people who have an exponential 20 kids, or maybe 40 kids altogether, you, by showing up, you've created an avenue for 60 people to be able to feed, live, and have another opportunity to maybe have another person who will start up a business and exponentially do the same. So we can't belittle the gift that God's given to you. And that's the essence of what we'll be talking about at that session, is how do you steward that gift, and how do you show up with what God's given you, because there is context scripturally for you to kind of be occupying those spaces. One more thing I'll give to you for free, which is kind of basically one of the things I'm giving you the talk essentially for what I'll be talking about, is that thing where the scripture that talks about like the creation is groaning for the manifestation of you and I. It literally is that, creation is in pain. I am groaning because there are things that I haven't seen in you, Karim, or in others around me that I need, but I don't realize I need, and I'm groaning because I need it, but I can't put language on it. But in you showing up, you're making a difference in my life. So it's not even this like selfish thing of I want to do this to make money. It's this thing of I have a God-given responsibility to push out this, to treasure this gift is given to me, so that when I show up, I can be a difference in policy, in wherever it is the sphere is.
That was fire. That was actually amazing. And I think even for me, going back to what I said about the parable of the talents, it's something that I've been wrestling with personally for ages, and you've just given me a whole like another perspective unboxing of that scripture. That's just like there's something just like clicked for me.
I've been spending a heck. That's where that's what God's been speaking to me about this in terms of what we need to focus on that talk, and there's so much richness in that parable. It is ridiculous. Like you could spend a whole year doing talks on each line of that parable and you still wouldn't do it enough justice. It's like my mind's just been like all, all over the place, you know. So yeah, totally with you with that.
Man, I'm so looking forward to it. And you mentioned something there specific about like entrepreneurship, or well, in life generally, because I can relate to this as well. But you said you try, so you got this seed inside of you, and obviously at some point you want to become a tree, like a flourishing tree, and that's a biblical promise. But that process, the refining process that you talked about, it looks a little bit like trying and failing. What do you do when you fail? How do you protect that seed as it's growing, as it's going through shoot form? How do you protect it from the like the discouragement that comes through failure?
I don't think there's a clear answer. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think there is the difference between kind of success in quotes and failure is just not giving up, right? Where you're like, well, actually, you know, you've been beat down, but I'm going to stand up and go again. And I think because there is a calling and there's a charge that's bigger than you, and understanding the perspective of I will be measured, or I would give an account of how I stewarded the gift that he's given to me. And so in me quitting, that's not really an option. And it seems really like harsh, but as a servant of Jesus Christ, I am a servant to him in that way. And so even though it's dark, I mean, like there was a business I went into. I spent the most money that I'd ever spent on a business ever, and I was absolutely convinced that God was in it. And I'd done all my research, and everything was like 100%, or as close to 100% as it could be. And unfortunately, I dealt with the person who was who was one of the key people in terms of the manufacturer was a not so honest entity, which you couldn't really factor in so much. And so I ended up getting burnt, and that was really painful. And I had been candid a few months where it was just like, actually, trauma just happened, and I don't feel like I can speak to people about it. And everybody was kind of coming to me and, you know, hey, like, how's this thing you were working? I'm like, dude, like, I really just I'm not in that space where I want to talk about it, because I'm still kind of almost grieving, almost like it's the loss of a child. Not a child, that seems like a very, but in a sense that's what it felt like, that you were grieving a loss of something. And it was really painful. And in my head, I'm going, actually, God, I really don't need to do this. I'm comfortable where I'm at. I'm doing okay career wise. I can continue to grow my career. I can continue to invest and, you know, steward my finance as well. But I don't really I mean, this entrepreneurial thing, it's painful, and I don't want to do it anymore. But a few months after, you know, kind of you have to pick yourself up and go again. And so I don't have an answer in that's simple, but essentially I feel like for me, what it has been, it's just this whole thing of, I don't have any alternative. I'm called to occupy this lane that I'm in, and so I need to continue to not give up and just show up and learn and get better and get, you know, good mentors and people who are a bit more experienced than I am, and have them come alongside me and all that stuff. But,
It's amazing advice, and actually, like you said earlier about getting the chills, like I felt that chills about just not giving up, and about how I thought it was so powerful when you said that being a servant to Christ, it's not in the same level of like success and failure that the culture of the world brings. So my servitude is not dependent upon things going great. I'll serve God. A lot of things are going bad. I'm not going to serve him and I'm going to give up. My servitude is dependent upon his like faithfulness. He doesn't change. Like the outcome might change, but he never changed. His call on my life never changed. I think that's something that even in just speaking about it, that's almost resettled and really helped me in terms of what, you know, what's my call, what's the seed that I have, what do I need to pursue. You finished on a really nice point about mentors, finding people that are mentors, finding people that are, and I think that's a key in all of this. Who were the most influential people in your life? Who are the people that you've been to, and why were they the most influential people?
I think that for different, I don't think it's a formal thing as such. It's just there are relationships with people who are ahead of you in different areas. So the people who I'll go to find spiritual in quotes challenge to, you know, spiritual challenge in general will be different from the people who I would go to for maybe a specific business thing. And so I guess I've had, and then obviously you have different seasons as well, where you kind of have different people who come alongside you for those seasons. But I think it's very much, it depends. I have a few relationships that I value, for different reasons, and they add strength to me at in different areas of my life. Um, it seems like a brownie point thing, but my wife is one of them, because she's not all things to me. She cannot be all things to me. But there are certain areas of life that it's helpful to have somebody who looks you in the eye and go, hey, like, yeah, I believe in you. And you can go again. And that's been probably that's probably the most important relationship you could have, right, aside to your relationship with God. So yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the ones off the bat. And then there are a few others. There are some kind of people who are speaking to me from a marriage type space, and we're firming that up because we've had, again, different people in different seasons, and sometimes when some of those relationships maybe kind of fall away for different reasons, it's important to kind of pick that up and find somebody else who can hold you accountable and kind of go, hey, like, dude, sit down, you're not doing okay. And that, I found that to be really helpful. And as a man, it's not the natural thing you want to do because you want to kind of feel like, actually, I'm my own man and all that stuff. But there is value in finding people you trust who can go, hey, like, sit down, put your ego aside. Sounds like a J. Cole thing, actually. Leave that alone.
I mean, that's amazing. Obviously, you get brownie points for Chi. But what about the people that? So I'm assuming a lot of people who are graduating into that space, like, might be single, might not really have those relationships set up. Looking back, so for those people that are just about to graduate, how would they go about finding these? How would you advise they go about finding mentors?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Good. I mean, I think there are loads of people around. I think if you feel like you're called to predominantly occupy a career space, so you want to work up the ladder and all that stuff, go look for the people who are on top. Look for people, and don't look for them just on the basis of, well, you're the chief exec of a company, therefore I want you to mentor me. That's not really helpful. But if you see something on someone who is 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of you in terms of that career chain, approach them and say, hey, like, I can see, look, and do some research on them as well. So research them, figure out whether there might be a good fit synergy wise, and approach them and say, hey, like, I can see you went to Bradford University. I see you pursued a degree and you did an MBA, and you took similar steps to what I'm interested in, and I'm really keen to kind of learn from you. It would look like maybe one meeting every 3 months, if that's okay. And I'm happy to pay for coffee, something like that. The reality is, majority of these guys or girls are not really asked. And when they're asked, they're not really they're normally asked a lot by people who are not committed to actually going after them and actually pursuing what's on their lives. It's just a thing of, hey, like, I'll do this because it seems cool, and maybe you might give me a pay rise, or maybe give me, and that should not be where you're coming at it from. So essentially, if you get a job, look for someone who's ahead of you, approach them, and offer to buy them coffee, and just do that often. I think if you're not in a job, go on LinkedIn, look for people who are in a similar space, similar career to what you're going after. Offer to buy them lunch and coffee, take them out, pick their brains, go prepared. Do research, get some good questions, learn from them. And I think when you get into that kind of corporate space, if your goal is to kind of climb up the ladder, I think get your face out there as well. So when they're looking for people who will do something that seems intimidating, like you want to go in and give a spotlight about anything, a spotlight, or maybe give a talk to a team of 20 or 50 or 100 people, and they say, hey, like, you're looking for volunteers, put your hand up. in this virtual world that we're in now, when you're doing, most of our meetings are kind of virtual, turn on your camera. Don't let people around the business get to see who you are, what you look like. And you'll be amazed that actually just that familiarity, because even though the virtual stuff has made it a little bit impersonal, the reverse, and I feel like I'm going off on a bit, but I think it's important. The reverse is true, that actually because only a few people put their cameras on, when you walk into the office, you become the glue. So you're the one who is like, hey, like, we recognize that face, and how can I connect with him or her so that she could be the one who can connect me to other people? And then you become a reconciler of people to each other, in your space. So again, I say that if that's your motivation and that's what you're going after. Not everyone's wired that way. I don't think I'm wired to climb up the ladder necessarily, because that's not where my passion is. And so, yeah, different strokes, but that'll be my advice.
It's a great advice. And going back to your J. Cole reference, so listen to early albums to where he is now. Obviously, you can see a level of maturity that only has to come with age, a level of that political maturity, awareness. What do you think, or from your position of maturity now, what kind of advice would you give to Austin just finishing university? Going back those few years, what would be your advice to your younger self?
It might sound, it's a bit. I don't know. I guess the short answer to it. I don't think I would change that much in my story, though, because again, like I said, the things that you get wrong, the theoretical knowledge of, hey, like, don't do that, because it's different from, and it's not saying that you want to experience all the hurt, but sometimes, and especially being, having been a teenager at some point, and when people are telling you, hey, like, actually don't do that, you don't listen anyway. So I guess for me, if I could change anything, I probably would have, because I think in terms of my sense of purpose, destiny, identity, and all that stuff, that sort of started to come together when I rededicated my life to God. And that was like, to what we we're talking about earlier, late into my undergrad degree. And so the sense of purpose of why am I doing a degree in the first place, it didn't really dawn on me. And in fact, interesting story, one of my professors or lecturers from uni messaged me on LinkedIn probably like 8 years or so after, 8 to 10 years after I'd finished uni. And he sent me around. He was like, "Oh, you've been busy," and he was referring to like my career and all of that, and I was giving a compliment. But the way the compliment was given, I should have been offended by it because he was almost suggesting, and validly as well, because I was not a serious student, and so he was almost surprised that actually, considering how reckless, unserious, not interested I was when I was in uni, he was like, "Well done for turning it around," And so I guess, for me, I feel like if I had known earlier and got that sense of purpose and all that stuff earlier, I probably would have completely smashed my undergrad. I'd have built stronger relationships with my lecturers because they were really, really there to help me, but I didn't want to know. I missed probably half of uni because I was just not really interested. I turned up late to a lot of classes. I was the guy, in the library 3 days before, turning it around. I didn't fail, but I didn't do as amazing as I could have, because I didn't put myself to it. So if I had to change or give myself advice thinking about it now, it probably would be, hey, like, sense of destiny, sense of identity, and what you're doing undergrad for, because that probably would have changed trajectory, because I'd have probably being more switched on about what it is I wanted to do earlier on, rather than late in the day.
It's funny, man. God clearly does miracles, See,
oh yeah. If you ask the lecturer, it was a massive miracle. It's just like,
even going back to like the things that because I think honestly, everybody, it's the advice that I give to my little siblings. Everybody is like, everyone's advice to the younger self is to work harder, but exactly what you're saying about that learning process, and actually what you said about your relationship with God, is that the most important factor in change was you developing into a deeper relationship with God and recommitting your life. And that doesn't happen without a diversion, or without a step away, or without a focusing on things that maybe in retrospect I wouldn't focus on. And so I think there's even an element there of like coming to terms with the parts where you just weren't like weren't on it, weren't good enough, distracted, making mistakes, doing whatever, coming to terms with that being a part of that wider destiny story as well, and to not kind of look back on those times with regret. Or a lot of people who are kind of lean to the end of university, a big thing is to look back and say, you know what, I didn't make the most of it, I didn't do as much as I thought I would, I'm not at the place I thought I was. But a lot of what you've been saying today, and just even for me, is like all of those things, even the bits when I didn't try as hard, even the bits when I chose to do this thing that I really shouldn't have done instead of what I should be doing, all of those moments come together to produce the whole. And even what you're saying about Joseph, are you talking about Jacob or Joseph?
Joseph, yeah.
Joseph. So, and he's with the dreams and going through that whole process. That even for Joseph, a lot of the things that formed him were, like you're saying, were not good things. Were he had integrity, but there were things that were really damaging. And so it's like, to put all of those things together is to see that, you know what, the purpose, the destiny of the seed is formed in a place of friction and transition and being a bit out of control, and all these kind of things come together to form the soil in which God can plant that seed, in which then that seed can birth. So that's a long way of saying that everything you're saying is really, really helping me, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of other people. So honestly, Austin, that's been literally been amazing. And I feel like I've learned and been challenged a lot by what we've talked about today. So I'm really looking forward to Thursday, the New Kind of Kingdom sessions. What are you most looking forward to about being at the New Kind of Kingdom sessions?
I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be great to just get everyone together. I think, when you do life on life thing, this life on life thing is what, the Bible talks about, iron sharpening iron type thing. But I feel like, I'd love us to leave with a sense of vision, a sense of purpose, clarity on kind of the next steps, really practical things. And I'm excited to see, 3 months, 6 months, a year, a couple of years down the line, how we can trace back some of the big things that, we change in society together on the basis of what we kind of hash out. So, looking forward to seeing everyone and, believe God for amazing things.
It's amazing. So thank you so much for jumping on this call, for talking about all this stuff, for sharing your heart as well, and for leaving us with so much gold. I'm really looking forward to people getting a chance to wrestle with that and be there on the day. And so thank you so much for watching, guys. And if you out there found the year looking to graduate, make sure you check the link below for the New Kind of Kingdom sessions on Thursday the 12th of May. A whole evening together to share with guests like Austin. We have Andy Kellum, director of his own creative agency, and also Caroline Lloyd, who's a healthcare professional, to explore what it looks like to release God's kingdom and to release the gold, as Austin said, the gold that's inside of us, and to be the light of Jesus Christ in all of the different areas in the world. And so we're really looking forward to seeing you there, and we're really excited to see what God is going to do. So I'll see you very soon.